Oh boy. I guess the new generation just loves to tell us how mean the old heads are and how they should just enjoy the game. But then they just can't help themselves to start a controversy or start throwing jabs against the older era. And I guess Kevin Durant just couldn't help it. He was on Mind the Game with Steve Nash and LeBron James, and I guess it's just like a safe space for throwing jabs at some of the greats. And this was no different. So I'm sure you've heard it by now. Many YouTube content creators have been talking about it today and these past couple of days, where Kevin Durant essentially said he was talking about being committed to the game. You know, it's hard to stay committed to the NBA and just be able to do the things that they do on a yearly basis. So in doing so, he felt the need to, I'm not going to say attack, but throw a little jab at the GOAT himself, Michael Jordan. So if you've been living under a rock and haven't heard it, I'm going to just phrase it out. I have the quotations right here with me. But he basically said, like, all right, yeah, I'm 10, 12 years in. I got 4 MVPs, 4 championships, but do I still want to do this? You know what I'm saying? Some people say, I want to go play baseball, and then they come back. Other people say, I'm going to go 22 straight. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we know what you're saying, and we know who you're talking about. That's the key element of it, is that we know who you're talking about, and we know who you're trying to give props to and who you're trying to throw a little dig at. So he's saying how Jordan won 3 championships and had multiple MVPs, but left in 93 to go chase a dream. And I have a video coming up very soon that's going to document some things that I think need to be documented, because a lot of creators and analysts and whoever you want to talk to try to paint certain narratives of Jordan that just aren't true. But that's for a later date. So here, he's trying to show us that 22 years straight being committed is somehow greater than winning 3 straight championships, multiple MVPs, multiple finals MVPs, having a tragic event happen to you where his father was essentially murdered, and walking away from the game that he had dominated for the past 3 seasons. So let's make that make sense from KD's perspective, I guess. I guess he saw this as not being dedicated, as not being committed to the game. And what LeBron's done, playing 22 years straight, which is phenomenal. And I'm not saying that as if it's some easy feat for any player to do. The fact that these guys are being able to play longer than guys of the past is incredible. It's showing that nutrition works. It's showing that some of the technologies are working for them, especially a guy like KD, who's had multiple injuries in the last couple of seasons. As he gets older, and he's still able to go out there and perform at a fairly high level. Same thing with LeBron James. But it's just, in so many ways, it's so short-sighted to say that, because there were many factors that led to that first retirement with Michael Jordan. And the biggest, and his father always having a dream of him playing baseball and him trying to fulfill that dream. And we're sitting here talking like that was some kind of, like he just said, you know, I'm going to leave the game. You know, I can't handle it anymore. Let me go away, play a sport that's even harder in some ways, because, you know, baseball is one of those sports where you have to have high level IQ and high level hand-eye coordination, all those things. So he went from a sport that, yeah, you needed those tools as well, to a sport that you need those times, you know, however many. I'm not a baseball player, but I know that baseball is not an easy sport. I've tried it. My kids have tried it, and they couldn't quite get it down to do it. And, you know, in contrast, my son plays basketball, and he plays it at a fairly high level. So there's levels to that in some ways. But I'm not trying to put baseball over basketball. I'm just saying that to go from one sport to another, it's not an easy feat to do, and it's not something that the weak-minded or the weak can do. And it's just like you take out that element of his father's died. You think about KD and how close he is to his mother. Have the famous quote from him, "You're the real MVP," that he, during his MVP speech, proclaimed to his mother. So just imagine, and I hate to say something like this, but the scenario that something happened to his mother. Do you think he's going to want to go out there, commit fully to playing basketball, to commit fully to a team when you're going to have to deal with the media? You're going to have to answer questions that you don't want to answer. It's different. I know people will say, well, what about Karl Anthony Towns? That type of stuff happened, but that was a different scenario. It wasn't that his father was sick. It wasn't that his father was, just super, super old. It was the fact that somebody did something to his father that could have been prevented or could have just not happened that took him away from him. And I don't want to delve into that too far, but really, KD, come on, man. Come on. You're not the most liked in the first place. And most people do admire your game and respect your game, and I do. But sometimes low talk like this, low just comments like this are just unnecessary. Just talk about the game you love, and you don't have to do little things to big up another player and then try to, I'm not going to say damage, but trying to throw shade on another player, especially when we have all this, I'm calling it era-isms, where this era of fans talk negatively about this other era and back and forth and vice versa. It's just silly. If we love the game of basketball, we should just love the game of basketball no matter what decade it is, what era it is, when it is. We just should love it. I love basketball. I'll go to AAU tournaments that my son's not even playing in, and we'll sit there and watch because I just love the game. I watch college basketball. I watch some. I'm not a huge WNBA fan, but I watch it. I mean, it's actually in some capacity good basketball. It's very competitive. I will say that. Where at some NBA games, you just don't see the competitive nature there like you do there. Like every team, every player seems like they want it. Where some nights it just seems like certain teams are just going through the motions. But we're not going to get into that conversation right now. But yeah, I just wanted to speak on this real quick because I just don't get it. Like, do players in this current generation just feel so disrespected that they have to jump at every opportunity to downgrade the greats of the past? Maybe Jordan's just an easy target. I don't hear that so much with Kareem. I don't hear that with, Wilt and Bill Russell and those guys. But it's because Jordan's name just stays in everyone's psyche. It stays in everyone's, either their mouths or their fingertips. That sounds a little crazy, but you know what I mean. His name just stays relevant. Where when those guys, Kareem and those guys, they're still relevant to the conversation, but they're just not as relevant when it comes to the current era of basketball because they played a completely different style than we see now. Whereas Jordan, wing players, you can kind of always kind of give them some concentrated talk because the game has moved into that capacity for the most part. So I don't know. I don't know. And I think that KD could have really just bypassed that and just talked about him and the current players, LeBron, his friend, whatever. And he didn't have to add that tidbit. But, it's par for the course because I'm sure there'll be those from the past, those old heads, as you guys like to call them, that are going to really go after Kevin Durant for these comments. I heard Rob Parker. He's a guy that is fairly anti-LeBron. So he had some things to say about that. And I mean, it's what's going to happen. It's a back and forth affair, and it's just never going to stop unless we just stop it. Unless we can just talk the game, whether we're talking about today's game, whether we're talking about the 90s, 80s, whenever. Just talk about that era. like I say with the GOAT debate, if you're pro Michael Jordan, just talk Michael Jordan. Don't talk LeBron James and everything he can't do or didn't do, because you're not really talking the GOAT debate. You're telling us the negatives of LeBron James and vice versa. If you're going to talk about LeBron James, talk about LeBron James and the great things he's done. Don't talk about Michael Jordan, everything he did or didn't do. It's just, I mean, if I feel like a player, a team or whatever is the greatest team, if I can't sit there and talk about the good of that player or that team, then we shouldn't be discussing a GOAT debate or a greater team or whatever. Because all we're doing is talking about the other instead of the player or team that we think is the greater one. So if we have to name every reason why the other one isn't great without saying why the person or player or team we're talking about is great, then it defeats the whole purpose, because you're just educating people on the other player, not the player you're representing. So me not talking about Michael Jordan, who I think is the GOAT, instead telling everybody about LeBron being this or that, it's asinine, because they didn't come to see why LeBron isn't the GOAT. They want to know why Michael Jordan is. So I know I rambled a little bit on this one, but come on, KD. We just need to, when we're talking about things like this, when they're asking you questions on these podcasts, just stick to the script. Just stick to what you're talking about, what you're doing right now. Unless the question is, what was Michael Jordan doing, 93 or whatever. Then, of course, you're going to talk about this. But use some context. That's what I'm always big on, context. Don't just say it in a way that, it just seemed like Michael Jordan just up and left and there was no alternate reason why he walked away from the game. It was just he wanted to go play baseball and kind of re-energize himself and then come back. And maybe that was what Mike had in his mind. Maybe not. We don't know. So anyways, we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for continuing to support the channel. Inching closer and closer to that 3,000 sub goal. I appreciate you guys. And if you want to help me get there, please subscribe. And definitely, if you can, just smash the like button to help the channel get back into the good graces of the algorithm. Because right now, algorithm's a little iffy. So the way you could help us continue to be in it and grow even more is to hit that like button. I thank you guys so much. And let me know what you thought about KD's comments. And if you agree with what he said, or you thought it was just a little bit a way to throw jabs at Jordan to uplift LeBron because, he made that little comparison. Let me know in the comments also. So thank you guys, and be back with more content very soon.